Most countries have a history. Turkey is history. Still breathing, still walking around. Stand in Istanbul for an hour and you'll hear the call to prayer echo off Byzantine walls. Watch a cargo ship pass through waters that armies once fought over for centuries, and smell something frying in a pan that your great-great-grandmother probably would have recognized. This is a country of 85 million people, stretched across 2 continents, built on top of more than 10,000 years of human civilization. The Romans were here. The Greeks were here. The Hittites were here before both of them. The Ottomans showed up and ran one of the longest-lasting empires the world has ever seen, for over 600 years. And then, in 1923, someone basically hit reset and built a modern republic almost from scratch. What came out the other side is something that doesn't fit neatly into any category. Let's explore it through 7 dimensions. Simple, full of surprises. Here's a question nobody really asks. Where did civilization learn to trade? Part of the answer is here. Around 600 BC, the Lydians, living in what is now Western Turkey, minted the world's first coins. Before that, people were bartering grain for goats and cloth for copper. The Lydians invented the idea that a small piece of metal could represent value. It sounds obvious now because it changed everything. But that's just one layer. The Hittites were here long before that, one of the ancient world's great superpowers, signing what historians consider the first known peace treaty with Egypt around 1259 BC. The Phrygians gave us the legend of King Midas. The Urartians built fortresses so sturdy they're still standing. Then came the Seljuks, a Turkic people who swept in from Central Asia and transformed Anatolia with new architecture, new administration, and a network of caravanserais. Roadside complexes where merchants could rest, eat, and trade for free. It was essentially a 12th century highway system with free hotels attached. Cities like Konya became intellectual powerhouses, drawing scholars, poets, and mystics from across the Islamic world. But the story everyone knows begins with a small frontier principality near a city called Bursa. That principality had big ambitions. Within a few generations, it became the Ottoman Empire, which lasted 623 years, spread across 3 continents, and at its peak governed around 30 million people across cultures and religions that somehow, mostly, coexisted. When it ended, it didn't fade out quietly. In 1923, a military commander named Mustafa Kemal Ataturk declared a republic and launched one of history's most radical modernization projects. In 1928 alone, he replaced the Arabic script with Latin. 35 million people had to learn to read and write their own language again, differently. The literacy drives that followed were unlike anything attempted at that scale before. Here's a number that puts it all in perspective. The first census of the new republic in 1927 counted 13.6 million people. Today, over 85 million. Everything you're about to hear happened while that number multiplied by 6. Turkey doesn't have one climate. It has about 6, all packed into a space roughly the size of Texas and California combined. Start in the Black Sea region in the north, humid, green, almost Norwegian in its moodiness. Steep mountains drop straight into the sea. Tea plantations cling to the slopes at angles that seem physically improbable. Turkey produces over 250,000 tons of tea per year here, and drinks almost all of it. No country consumes more tea per capita. Not even England, not even China. A Turk drinks roughly 3.5 kilograms of tea per year. Some drink that much per month. Swing south and you hit the Mediterranean coast, a completely different planet. Warm, bright, with water so blue it seems fake. Antalya alone pulls in over 15 million tourists a year. The economy runs on sun, oranges, and hospitality. Head west to the Aegean and the pace drops. Olive groves, vineyards, white-walled towns. The food gets lighter, the conversations longer, the lifestyle closer to the kind of thing people move to southern Europe chasing. Now go inland. Central Anatolia is volcanic, arid, and strange. Cappadocia looks like a landscape a child drew when asked to invent a new world. Tall, mushroom-shaped rock formations, entire valleys carved into living space, churches hidden inside cliffs. More on that in a moment. And then there's eastern Turkey. High plateaus, rugged mountain ranges, a completely different rhythm of life. Mount Ararat rises to 5,137 meters. The highest point in the country, visible for hundreds of kilometers, permanently snow-capped, permanently imposing. Lake Van nearby has water so alkaline, almost soapy, that local communities traditionally used it to wash carpets. Geography as household appliance. The point isn't just that Turkey is diverse, it's that this diversity shaped everything. The food, the dialects, the architecture, the economy, the temperament of the people. Geography here isn't background, it's biography. The 16th century Ottoman Empire was one of the most powerful entities on earth, and Istanbul was its brain. Under Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire stretched from Budapest in the north to Baghdad in the east, and down through Egypt to the Arabian Peninsula. Roughly 15 to 30 million people lived under Ottoman rule, a complex multicultural system that governed Turks, Greeks, Armenians, Arabs, Jews, Slavs, and Berbers under one administrative structure. The architect who defined this era wasn't a sultan. His name was Mimar Sinan, and he designed over 300 structures, mosques, bridges, caravanserais, aqueducts. His greatest masterpiece, the Selimiye Mosque in Edirne, has a dome wider than the Hagia Sophia's. He built it when he was 80 years old. Sinan's buildings still define the skylines of cities that were once part of the empire. From Istanbul to Sarajevo to Cairo, trade flowed through this empire like blood through a body. Europe, Africa, and Asia were all connected through Ottoman territory, and Istanbul sat at the center. It's where coffee first arrived in the 1500s, brought up from Yemen, popularized in the capital. Coffee houses appeared almost immediately, and these weren't just places to drink something hot. They were public forums where people debated politics, recited poetry, played chess, and gossiped about the court. Europe eventually got coffee from the Ottomans. The coffeehouse culture came with it. But what made this era truly remarkable was its cultural synthesis. The empire didn't impose one identity. It absorbed many. That's why Ottoman cuisine looks different in different cities, why Ottoman architecture has Greek, Persian, Arab, and Byzantine elements all woven together, and why the humor, dry, self-aware, built around irony, has survived long after the empire itself disappeared. This era didn't just produce monuments, it produced a cultural DNA that still runs through modern Turkey. Turkey runs on tea and conversation, and the two are almost always happening at the same time. Turkish breakfast kahvaltı is not a meal, it's an event. You sit down to a spread of white cheese, tomatoes, cucumbers, olives, honey, clotted cream, eggs, fresh bread, and at least 2 kinds of jam. It takes an hour minimum. You don't eat it fast. That's not the point. The point is the table, the people around it, and the talking. Food is deeply regional. In Gaziantep in the southeast, a city UNESCO designated a creative city of gastronomy. Baklava is made with local pistachios, and the kebab culture runs so deep that there are families who've been making the same dish the same way for 4 generations. On the Black Sea, it's anchovies, fried, baked, in rice, in bread. In the Aegean, olive oil goes in almost everything, including desserts. Ask someone from one region about another region's food, and you'll get a spirited opinion. Music is just as layered. Traditional saz folk music from the villages, arabesque, a melancholic urban style born in the 1970s that the establishment tried to ban and failed, classical Ottoman court music, and a modern pop industry that has become massive across the Middle East and Eastern Europe. Family structures are tight, multi-generational households are common, and social life orbits around shared meals, weddings, funerals, and everything in between. There's a tradition in many neighborhoods called askıda ekmek, bread on the hook. You buy a loaf at the bakery and pay for two. The second hangs on a hook by the door. Anyone who needs it can take it, no questions asked. It's been around for centuries. It's still working. Culture here isn't something you observe from a distance. It's something you get pulled into whether you plan to or not. In 1994, a German archaeologist working in southeastern Turkey started uncovering something no one was prepared for. Göbekli Tepe, a temple complex carved from stone, arranged in precise circles, decorated with animal reliefs, snakes, foxes, vultures, wild boars. Dated to around 9,600 BC. That's 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It predates the invention of writing, the wheel, and pottery. The people who built it didn't yet have agriculture. They were hunter-gatherers, and somehow they coordinated the labor to construct one of the largest ceremonial sites in the ancient world. This rewrote the standard textbook version of human development. We used to think, first farming, then villages, then religion. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite. Religion, or at least organized ritual, might have come first. We built temples before we built granaries. In central Turkey, Cappadocia hides a different kind of secret underground. Derinkuyu is a subterranean city carved more than 80 meters deep, capable of sheltering up to 20,000 people. It had kitchens, stables, wine cellars, schools, churches, and a ventilation system sophisticated enough that the air stays breathable throughout. Nobody is entirely sure who built it, when, or why. What we know is that people went underground here possibly during invasions and built an entire parallel world below the surface. Then there's Mount Ararat, the legendary resting place of Noah's Ark. Whether you read the story as myth, metaphor, or folk memory, the mountain holds an undeniable grip on the culture of the region. People have been climbing it looking for answers for centuries. And the Nazar, the blue glass eye. More than 40 million are produced in Turkey each year. You'll find them hanging in homes, pinned to babies' clothes, attached to car mirrors, built into building facades. It's not superstition exactly. It's more like a shared cultural reflex. The acknowledgement that envy is real and that a small blue eye might just keep it at bay. Mystery here isn't decoration. It's woven into the architecture, the landscape, and the daily rituals. Let's address the mental image most people have of Turkey. Beaches, bazaars, kebabs, Istanbul's skyline at sunset. It's not wrong. It's just radically incomplete. Misconception number 1. Turkey is caught between East and West, tradition and modernity. Over 75% of Turkey's population lives in cities. Istanbul has over 3,000 tech companies. Ankara has a thriving startup scene. A centuries-old mosque and a fiber-optic co-working space can share the same block, and nobody treats it as a paradox. The clash exists in think tank papers more than in actual streets. Misconception number 2. Turkish culture is monolithic. Ask a person from Istanbul, a person from Trabzon on the Black Sea, and a person from Mardin near the Syrian border what Turkish culture means to them. You will get three very different answers, delivered with equal confidence. The country is culturally vast, linguistically, ethnically, regionally, historically layered in ways that don't compress into a single image. Misconception number 3. Turkey is a Middle Eastern country. Geographically, it bridges Europe and the Middle East. Culturally, it's neither, and both. It's a NATO member. It's a candidate for EU membership since 1987, which is a story of its own. It has more in common with some Balkan states than with its Arab neighbors in some respects, and more in common with Central Asian Turkic cultures than with either. Misconception number 4. It moves slowly. In the last 20 years, Turkey built over 20,000 kilometers of new highways and more than 50 new airports. The new Istanbul airport opened in 2018, handled 76 million passengers in 2023, making it one of the 5 busiest airports in the world. The country didn't inherit that infrastructure. It built it fast, deliberately, and recently. Turkey is not a stereotype. It's a moving target that most people stopped updating a decade ago. Turkey's economy ranks among the 20 largest in the world. That number sometimes surprises people, and it shouldn't. Manufacturing, textiles, agriculture, tourism, construction, and an expanding tech sector all drive a GDP that has grown significantly over the past 2 decades. Not without turbulence, but consistently. The country is a major exporter of everything from cars and electronics to hazelnuts. Turkey produces roughly 70% of the world's supply. And cherries. Yes, the English word cherry comes from the Turkish city Giresun. Turkish Airlines flies to over 120 countries, more destinations than any other airline on Earth. Think about what that means logistically and diplomatically. Turkey has made itself a global transit hub, placing Istanbul between East and West as a connector the same way it's been connecting trade routes for 1,000 years. Turkish TV dramas are quietly one of the most significant cultural exports of the 21st century. They reach over 500 million viewers across 150 countries, second only to the United States in total drama exports. Shows filmed in Istanbul air in Latin America, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, and across the Arab world. Soap operas are diplomacy now. Defense technology is a newer story. Baykar's Bayraktar TB2 drone became famous during several recent conflicts and is now exported to dozens of countries. Turkey went from drone importer to drone exporter in under a decade, a shift that military analysts were not entirely expecting. And then there's tourism. Over 50 million visitors per year, consistently placing Turkey in the global top 5. People come for the coast, stay for the food, and leave confused about why they don't have a better mental model of the place. Modern relevance here isn't inherited from the past. It's manufactured, exported, and expanding. Here's what makes Turkey unusual. It doesn't have one story. It has about 30, all running simultaneously, all contradicting each other slightly, and all somehow adding up to something coherent. Ancient and modern, Eastern and Western, cosmopolitan and deeply local. A place where you can eat a 4,000-year-old recipe for breakfast, visit an underground city at lunch, stand in a cutting-edge airport in the afternoon, and watch a whirling dervish ceremony in the evening. All in the same country, possibly the same day. That's what these 7 dimensions are for. Not to flatten a place into a list of facts, but to give it depth. The kind you can't get from a travel brochure or a news headline. If you want more stories that make the world feel bigger, stranger, and more interesting, subscribe and join us as we explore it one dimension at a time.